Hey, what's up? It's another episode of Watch You Strappin, and these are not watch reviews. They're just quick wristwatch check of the day with aftermarket strap usually. If I haven't shown a watch, a new one that is, on its stock OEM bracelet or strap option first. And today I have on a new watch in, finally. Pre-ordered this back in April, and now it's about mid-June. So it took about 2 months or so, but it's finally here, and this is the Nivada Grenchen F77. This is the blue dial. It's got that nice woven textured dial, which the F77 is kind of known for, with a date. I decided to go with a date. There's a non-date version, and there's also a black dial version, which has a little bit more of a Fotina loom to it. It's got like a warmish loom color in the daylight, but I went with this, just a straight clean white loom, which there isn't a whole lot of, to be honest, but I wasn't expecting this to be a loom monster. So you mostly have it in the hands, which are kind of nice the way that they're split down the middle. I know you can see that, and then the loom is kind of filled along the length of it in a short, a certain segment of the minute and as well as the hour hand. And the rest of the loom plots around the near the indexes, the applied ones, really nice in 3D, as you can see here. Sorry about the noise, I'm in a heavily traffic area. They're right at the very edge, or the outer edge of you can see that right there, right on the very ends of the loom plots, except for, of course, the date. Well, it's outside the date window, but it's basically kind of covering the same area. This reminds me of what, I don't know about modern, but I know one of my vintage Rolex Oyster Precision, and probably the Oyster Perpetuals back in the days, in the 70s, they used to have had a very similar thing where they just added the loom right at the very ends of the applied indexes. So it kind of reminds me of that. I'm sure other watch manufacturers have done similar things, but such as my personal experience. And that, of course, they got the rectangle loom on the seconds hands running right there. And yeah, I'm not gonna, this is going to be a bit of a longer watch you strap in, because it's going to be part of I guess part B technically of my unboxing video. I didn't get a chance to size it just yet. I just wanted to do a quick unboxing in that video and just show what you get, what it looks like coming out of the box. It's still in plastic and not sized up yet, so yeah, that was just meant to be an unboxing video. So don't get your panties all bound up that I didn't show it on the wrist. But anyways, here it is. I finally got it sized up shortly after I did that, and I've been wearing it basically the latter half of the day. Last night I was on a different watch. I just didn't feel like switching yet, but I did for overnight and to see how it does to this morning. And I'm probably going to be on this for at least a couple of days, I imagine, until I feel like changing it. But yeah, out of the box, as I said, it looks pretty nice. Some of the, I think the pre-production samples that have been going around, either at, like, say, the wind-up shows, or even maybe some people that have gotten a hold of some for watch reviews on the YouTube channels or something, they look a little bit passed around and beat up. So I don't think it really conveyed the level of finishing and detail that, it kind of, I don't think it made it look as good as in its natural light coming out of the box as it should have. I felt a little bit downplayed because of it wasn't in its best condition, I think, which is unfortunate. I think people will still like this watch regardless, and they probably have pre-ordered it anyways because they saw enough of it to really go for one. But I think in the future they should consider really getting out a nicer sample, or a few more, so that maybe the one or the few that are out there aren't so beat up. But anyways, as you can see, you probably couldn't see it as well because I still had it wrapped up in plastic yesterday in the unboxing, but the brush finishing is pretty nice. Sorry, I got a little dust on here, but anyways, you get the idea. Let me tone this down so you can see the brush work. Pretty nice and fine, even, and I like that it goes all the way through the bracelet. You got some high polished sides, which is not bad. It works because I believe the sides usually, well, actually, I think these are brushed here, but the sides of the case are definitely high polished. I think it works, and I think the width of where it's brushed kind of flows with the rest of the bracelet that's brushed. And it's a nice taper. I don't know what it tapers down to here. I didn't get the measurements yet, sorry, but it looks pretty a nice dramatic taper, which is good. Something like this style, and in general, most watches, you should get a decent taper on it, unless you're really into that beefy look. But this looks more elegant, and something like this, which is relatively thin. I think total thickness, including the crystal, should be around 12.6, but you'll see that it is a high, fairly decent box, partially dome, maybe, sapphire crystal, which is an improvement over the vintage model, which was acrylic, if I'm not mistaken, which is most likely of watches of that era during the 70s. And yeah, what can I get into? Well, the brush finishing, I'll continue that. It's nice flowing from the bracelet, well, through the bracelet definitely, and then you can see from the lugged surface on the top angled part here to the top of the case, through the octagonal bezel, and all the way through again, and continue. So it's pretty nice there. And if I don't know, hopefully I can see it. I might have some fingerprint smudges on this, but hopefully it shows that it's got pretty clean lines and transitions. I mean, this facet right here in this corner and the sides are all high polished, but still it's a pretty crisp line in my opinion. Nicely done. And yeah, this is a nice shade of blue. Let's go to the dial real quickly. It's a nice shade of blue. It can really pop. You can see some of the way it's woven. You angle it a certain way, like it really brightens up a bit. But then some areas, if you get dark enough, it might actually look even like a solid dark blue dial. But overall, I like the dial. I was worried that it might be a little bit too bright and light for me, but in actuality, it works. It's actually pretty nice shade of blue. And I've mentioned it before, but I am pretty particular on the shade of blue that I get on my watches. I do have a couple of niggles here, and we'll get into that. I guess this will tend into it's an initial review / mini review, but I plan to do an actual review later. But let's see here. So overall, nice thin bracelets. Actually, the links rather, they are screw for adjustment. There is no half links. You do have plenty of micro adjusts to fine tune it, so that's what I did here. And I like the clasp. It's milled. I can't undo it right now with one hand holding the camera, but it is an improvement over their usual bracelet option on the Nivada Grenchen watches, such as the Antarctic and the Deathmaster. They both share, I think, the same kind of beads of rice bracelet, which is okay. It's comfortable, but I don't know. It's not bad. It's good, okay for what it is, I would say. But the length of the beads of rice links maybe a little bit long for some, but I'm trying to remember if I have half links or not. But definitely have female end links. I mean male end links. So those center links kind of stretch out a bit, and we'll get into this one in a bit. But obviously this doesn't have that. Wouldn't work with a beads of rice style. And I'm glad that they at least have also upgraded the clasp here. I don't think, and I'm not aware that they use this particular clasp on any other watch right now. At least not. They usually have something that's got this kind of rounded little nib tab thing here at the end. Usually it's just a press, friction or snap fit, really old school type of bracelet, which you just snap closed. There's no flip lock or button deployment. If you are familiar with the other Nivada Grenchen clasp on the bracelet, you know what I'm talking about. And so I'm glad that this one seems to be nicer. I'm pretty sure the other one's milled, although it kind of looks and is functioning like a stamped one, but I'm pretty sure it's milled, even though it has an old school functioning. But this one has a similar kind of design, but the main thing is it is not a snap, or I don't know, snap fit, snap lock a bracelet fold over. It's just a fold over, but it has a dual trigger deployment, which is nice. I think that's a little bit more elegant. I like that. And I don't really need a safety or like a flip lock, that a little flip thing to lock it down further at the end here. So we got that, and so I think that's a smart move. I think people like this over if they had tried to do like a butterfly style deployment clasp. Though I got that to work like on my Dorenzo DRZ04, which is an integrated bracelet watch as well. It depends, not everyone's wrist sizes work with that, and some people just don't like that system and they prefer like a more traditional style clasp like this or something like that. Let me get my sleeve out of the way real quickly. It's starting to come down. Okay, so what else can I say? I really like this because I've been looking, as I mentioned in the unboxing, for a Royal Oak, AP Royal Oak looking watch. I really like that design, but it's crazy money and crazy difficult to find, even if you could. And I don't really anticipate ever being in that realm of spending that kind of cash for such a watch, unfortunately. So there have been many homages. There's like Casio is one thing, but I don't want to do an anti-digi thing, and those things are quite bulky in my opinion. Even if you get the metal thing on there with a fake crown, or you can get it without the fake crown, because there is no use for a crown on a Casio G-Shock. Cool, but not what I'm looking for this style of watch. I've seen some pretty nice and very convincing Seiko mods, for one thing, that really mimic the AP Royal down to the T, except for maybe Seiko branding on there, with a bracelet and everything. And in another part, rather not a life, but another phase of my watch collecting, I probably would have been totally down with that and just getting the look of that, like really, almost officially one-to-one, without having to spend that kind of money, and just have it rebranded as a Seiko or whatever mod company might have branded their dials or whatever. But I am past that phase for myself in my collecting. But you're still in it, no problem. I get it. I see the inherent, at least surface level value of just seeing something that looks like a super expensive, rare, or rather hard to get watch, versus spending money on more brand heritage and something deeper rooted, I suppose. There's different ways to do things, and which you're more comfortable with. And I've been through all sorts of phases. And there are definitely, again, similar to Seiko mods, there are definitely more than a handful of micro brands probably you can find on AliExpress that have done some pretty convincing mimic replications of the AP Royal Oak. And that's fine, but I do find them generally still kind of on the larger, bulkier side, 42 millimeters or something like that. I mean, really, 40 is still kind of big, but maybe people like it and they have the wrist size to support it. But integrated watches are tricky because they do tend to wear bigger than their stated dimensions. So I think it was smart for Tissot to put out the PRX in 35 millimeters. It'll wear up to a 36, 37, which I think, on the smaller side for these modern days, that's still very acceptable and comfortable to wear for a lot of people. And anyways, this is so long babble, but basically I wanted something with as much of that Royal Oak look and feel without being such a one-to-one copy, and this one does it. I mean, I'm glad this was actually a model that Nivada Grenchen put out back in the 70s. Thus, I believe F77, I believe it came out in 1977, and it supposedly is kind of a rare watch. I guess they didn't produce too many of these, is what I understand. And they did a great job at really replicating the look and feel, but I think updating the feel, it does imagine that most of the components and everything is very much more solid than back in the 70s, less jangly feeling and all that. But overall, it stays fairly true, almost 100% with a number of changes to the vintage model. And what I'd say is, let me see if I can back it up. My wrist is about 6.9 inches. At least that's what I last measured it. I don't think it's changed much for over many years. So we can go with that. 7-inch or so if you want to round up. And this is how it wears. This is a 37mm case, mind you. And unlike, I think, a lot of other reissues of vintage models, they either try to be exactly to size and scale of the original, or they might make it sized up to a larger, more modern size. I think they've done that with the Cricket. They do offer it in the classic up at least 36 or so, I forget exactly. And then they did that's the Volcane Cricket, that is, the alarm watch. And then they offer it in a larger 39 or 40mm. I know they have two sizes of that. And take the Black Bay, for instance. They now offer it in a 37mm, right? Which is the Black Bay 54, and then they go as large as 41 or 43 if you count the bronze. But you know, they did start off with the 41, which is a size up, obviously. And I can think of a number of other ones, but you get the idea. But this one, they actually sized down a bit. I think if I read correctly, at least from one video source, this is a 30. It was originally a 38mm, and they downsized it to a 37, which is cool. I don't mind. 38 I can do, but I think because this watch can wear a little bit larger because of it's an integrated bracelet watch, 37 works fine. It'll probably play up to be about a 38. I think the dial to bezel and case ratio keeps it at a good size. You can see here, if I can pull back a bit. They did actually, what else did they change? Off the top of my head, the indexes and the hands might be slightly different than the vintage model, but it's fairly close. The bezel is, I don't know what the rest of the case, but definitely the bezel, they mentioned that they smoothed out the new reissue. So I would say the facets, the angled facets around this octagonal bezel is just a little bit more curved or smoother. It's not as straight from the screw from corner to corner. And if you compare this image with, I've seen some where they compare these side by side, reissue with vintage, you'll see the difference. And so there's that. And again, this is a cool watch to give me at least a lot of the Royal Oak feel and appeal, with the brushing, very industrial, a lot of angled facets. But it's nice that they were able to do this in such a way that it doesn't feel like a one-to-one copy. There's a number of changes that they made that really is not Royal Oak, and I'll try to point some of them out as far as I'm aware of. And one thing is probably this, well, I guess size, but a lot of people back then were copying or taking inspiration from the Genta porthole design, and this is one of them. I think Belova is one, but they actually made it even closer looking to the AP Royal Oak, if I'm not mistaken. And I want to see there might be one other one that did it too. But anyways, what you can see here, one thing is the bezel. That's one of the most notable thing. Again, I don't think it's as angled, sharply angled or sided as the AP Royal Oak. So that's one thing. It's definitely thinner. It's not quite as wide as the AP Royal Oak, and that's the hex screws that are around the edges, you can see, right, are actually a little bit smaller too. But they did a nice job. At least they got that look, and they managed to keep the angle of the the slot that goes down that screw head, all facing the right direction, orientation, which some people that don't do this, they don't have these kind of screws, they just have the round ones. They'll just screw in and then they'll just go in all sorts of directions all around. And yeah, I didn't really dig that. The only one I can think of is it's a company in the US. Is it Perseus? That's the name of the model. I forgot the name of the actual brand, but they're in Detroit, and they've made a pretty nice kind of homage-y, integrated bracelet watch, but it's completely round bezel, but it has like 5 screws around the outside. But I don't know, they go all in sorts of direction, but overall the finish is pretty nice. But I remember holding that thing at a wind-up show several years ago, and it's nice, really catchy, eye-catching, but it's definitely was a heavy watch. The bracelet, the case, it felt really quite heavy. This doesn't. This it's actually got just enough weight to make it feel solid, but it doesn't feel burdensomely heavy as some of these can be, because again, an integrated bracelet watch, you just have wider extra bit of metal for the top of where the bracelet meets to the lugs, just to let it flow, and then of course the lugs themselves are just a bit wider to flow into the bracelet, conversely. So but yeah, you can see also, I believe the Royal Oak does not have such a high dome box sapphire crystal on top. I think it's relatively flat and in the same plane as the bezel itself, as far as I can remember. Maybe there have been some models that do this as well, but most of the ones I've seen, they don't. So that's one thing. And you can totally tell the case shape and profile is completely different from a Royal Oak. Yeah, it's definitely different. It's not the same thing here. And of course the bracelet is not the same, neither is the clasp. The dial texture is totally different. It's not that guilloche, I don't know, hobnail style that AP is generally known for. Handsets are different again. Lots of that. There's subtle details, and just the way it integrates from case to lugs and bracelet. And that's one thing I would say about this, is though it does have female end links, so to speak, these center links don't actually come down, articulate much, if at all. Very little. And I think they held it there for a reason. Is just the way how blunt the ends of the, I guess, the case or the end links are, and the lug ends are. You see how straight they're cut down? Let me try to zoom in. It pretty much goes straight down, right? So they do that, and then that extends down a bit to the bottom corner, and then I mean, it does curve down, you can see, but you can see how straight it is. So if they had angled that bottom corner inwards more, if you can imagine, so it's not straight down, it actually tapers in towards, there would be some room for the bracelet to kind of swing down or take it down a little bit lower. And as such, it kind of flows out just like this. I would say if your wrist is much smaller than mine, like you might, maybe 6 3/4 okay, but I'm would dare say that 6 1/2 might be pushing it, and anything under that, you might find the lug to lug a bit long, because the effective lug to lug with that center link, what I roughly measured, and that's not 100%, but from what I can tell, it's about 50 millimeters, and you can see how it could potentially, hang out. And especially if you got small wrists, I mean, from that point, the bracelet can drop down straight, but it'll kind of look weird. It just, I think, for anyone's smaller wrist, though, unfortunately, it might start to, the lugs stick out, and then it'll just drop straight down, and then it'll just make it look like the bracelet is kind of hanging outside of the case ends, if you know what I mean. If you can imagine that. I mean, you can kind of see it now, but I think for the most part, for my, let me make a little adjustment here, 7-inch wrist or so, I have just enough width on my wrist, circumference or whatever, that it just pulls the bracelet out a bit more, so it flows more from the case and lugs out to the bracelet without causing a weird break or sudden poke out and drop, if you understand my meaning. And that's the only thing that I think they might, I know they wanted to stay true to the original, but they did resize it and made some other improvements. Better bracelet, that's one thing, sapphire crystal and other things, but I think they might have thought this over slightly and maybe tapered that angle inwards more. Thus they can potentially allow for this center link to articulate down more and give a better fit for more variety of wrist sizes, particularly something under at least 7 or 6 3/4 inch wrist size. So yeah, I hope that I was able to explain and illustrate maybe this part of it. That's probably the main thing for me. I mean, it just works for me, I think. I don't find too much of an issue with it, as you can see from most angles. Seems to sit fairly flat and well and curve down close enough to my wrist where it doesn't jut. I give some leeway to vintage inspired models, you know. They may not have had the foresight or just the thought to refine certain case elements, I guess, back then, and I kind of roll with that. But at the same time, you know, if you're going to do a modern reissue, you could, it wouldn't hurt perhaps to consider allowing some creative liberties to further refine a case to make it work even better, or bracelet rather, as well. And that's the only thing. So I would say, you can see it just works fine, and I think it's just something to be aware of if your wrist size is a bit smaller than mine. But overall, I think the proportions look great. You can see it works pretty nicely. It's really nicely finished. It feels great on wrists. It's not too heavy, but it just feels solid enough, as I mentioned. I really like that blue. I think the black one would be a solid one too, if you want to just a more monochromatic look. Very classic as well. And then later this year, they said to put out like a smoky brown color. Is it? It's probably like a kind of a fume, a gradient effect with the same woven texture. If you look at look for vintage models of the F77, you'll see probably the color that they're referring to. It's kind of a, yeah, smoky brown. It's kind of a brownish, golden brownish color sort of in the most of the dial, but then it gets darker and kind of gradates to a darker edge around there, and that's pretty cool. I think that's kind of a theme for the 70s, because that color, brownish colors, is one thing. The way it's unboxing after I size up the bracelet, just to give you my thoughts right now after a day of wearing it. It hasn't even been a full day yet, but basically a day so far, and I think it's pretty cool. I like it. Keeper, I think this is definitely something I can see enjoying for quite a while, actually, despite some funky decisions, mainly in this area, the lugs. I think they could have made that bit better for more wrist sizes, but anything, anyone that has a fairly substantial wrist should be fine with that. But yeah, I think for an integrated sports watch kind of look like this, there are many out there now. I love my Dorenzo. That's definitely one of them. That's a good one. That's got original dial and handset design, which I look for. The Tissot PRXs, I get what, how cool they are, and that they went back to their past, and it's a nice reissue, and they're doing lots of great things with it. But I think the handset and dial are a bit plain for me personally. The ones with the hobnail or the guilloche dial are better, but still the handset maybe a bit too plain stick. At least these, they have some more facets to them. There's like a double baton style on the cardinal points, at least 12, 9, and 6. The hands are different, you know, they're split, you know, they have a unique kind of style to them, and so forth. And overall, the case, I think, is really cool. They, you know, they didn't do the same bracelet as a AP Royal Oak here, but then it's not just plain Jane. And I don't know, even though this lug area is kind of weird, the way they kind of didn't make it articulate as much, I do somehow like the way it's kind of working into the case, though. It has a very let me back up here. It has a very industrial feel. It's almost mechanical. I don't know. I like it. It looks cool. I like angled things and some hard edges and stuff and forms and shapes and lines, and that does it. But yeah, I think for something for smaller wrists, at least down to 7 or 6 3/4, and you want something that feels more of a vintage, or, you know, it's just not such an overdone size for this style of watch. This is one to look out for. The 35mm Tissot is probably one. Depending on the style and the way it's done, the dial to bezel ratio and all that, you might even go up to 39 or 40mm on such a style. It could still work, such as I think with Lorenzo, at least. I think they're pretty nice there. The DRZ04, and their new reduced DRZ02. Is it Aeroline or Aerospace? I think it's considered a reduced model of the DRZ02, but it's down from 41 down to 39, and there's lots of nice refinements on that one too. But the case is definitely wider, so it will definitely wear larger than a 39 in my opinion, but it'll wear better than the previous 41. But anyways, I'm kind of babbling on. Hope this gives you a pretty decent look at this watch. Again, oh, and then one last thing, I mentioned it before, but I'll just say these first 77 hours of the pre-orders were the only ones to be numbered. Doesn't mean there's only 77, but I think initially they're only making a total of 300, but I don't know if all 300 are numbered. I think, again, within the first 77 hours, but who knows how that is actually measured and recorded. Mine is number 102, so definitely over 77 of these the F77s were ordered. I don't know if that number includes just the blue and date version, or total blue date, blue no date, black no date, black with date, and so forth. But just an FYI, it does make these early ones have a little something special, but, you know, because they're the very few that will get the especially numbered, individually numbered case back. Other than that, honestly, it's not that big a deal, right? The rest of the watch later, when they produce more, I think at the end of the year is when you might start to see some be more available. They won't be numbered, but, you know, other than that, they should be exactly the same as this. So here's a side profile. I love the taper on this bracelet too, as I mentioned probably. And yeah, it's got a lot of charm, it's got a lot of sparkle, and it's kind of sporty too. It's a cool watch. It's a cool watch. I think it's worthy. So far, the timing seems to be good. I have to test it further, but the silk prop movement should be solid in this. It's not using the Newton, so don't worry about the any crown issues like this early Serica models had. But this is a more tried and true silk prop movement. You'll see in other watches. But seems to be calibrated pretty well so far. But, well, I'll keep you guys updated. Thanks for watching, and I'm out. And yeah, enjoy your watches.